av Serier med Anders Lundgren, Freddie Kaplan and a special guest. We have Matt Smith with us today. Anders, do you mind doing some kind of intro?
No, I don't. Very happy to have you here, Matt. You and I, we met through our mutual friend Kola Krause. So first off, shout out to Kola, of course, for bringing us together. And could you tell us a bit about how you met Kola? It's thereby hangs a tale, so to speak.
It's funny. I arranged to meet two people before my trip to Stockholm in late August. I knew I wanted to meet with Peter Bergting because I'm a huge fan of his work. And I have since I first discovered Demovoy. Well, it wasn't out yet. He was promoting it, I think, in 2013 or something. He was doing he was showing panels of it online, and I think he created a trailer video that was really nice. And I thought, this guy's great. And then I came to be aware that he did work in the Yolaverse as well. And so since then, we've had a little bit of correspondence, and I always buy all of his books. And it was a great opportunity to try to meet up with Peter. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because Peter had a change in schedule. But I had also arranged I had heard that there was a book on the Swedish band Bathory being written. Now, this is one of my favorite bands of all time. And I think almost every comic book I put out has a hidden referee to Bathory. Reference to Bathory in it somewhere, including the Yule Cat. And so when I saw this book was being written on Bathory by Kola and a friend of his who's a musician, I contacted him and thought, is there any chance we can meet up for a drink and I can hear about this book? So they're two separate guys I arranged to meet. Both of them recommended I meet you, Anders.
That's very flattering.
Kola was, his fan. He named you as, I think, it was either him or Peter named you as the Sweden's biggest Hellboy fan.
Okay.
Craft scholar. And so both of them recommended you. However, particularly with Peter, since he wasn't able to make the meetup we had planned, he was seeing, I don't know if he told you this, but he told me that he was thinking of you as a local guide. So he was sending you in so that I could meet with someone who knew Stockholm and could show us around. Luckily, the way things turned out, I was with my traveling buddy Rowdy, who Stockholm very well. So
he knows his way around. So
so we didn't have to press you into service as a
but you had quite a trip in August, right? You went to a music festival up north.
Yes,
if I'm correct.
Monogarm Open Air, which is holding their own mini festival with 5 or 6 bands.
Did you say Monogarm?
Yes.
Yeah. I have a tiny connection to that band actually. Yeah, because I used to be a really close friend with the bassist's younger brother. When they were the band was in their infancy. I think they're from the small town north of Stockholm where I'm from, or just So that was wow. Didn't see that one coming. Great. Wow.
Because they're listed as that being their birthplace, or maybe that's just for the.
Not sure. But he was the bassist for a while, I think, but not like in the early days of that band. So wow, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it was a great show, and we used it as a focal point to kind of convince ourselves to make the trip. But really, the trip was about many things. About we wanted to see the burial mounds in Gamla Uppsala.
Yeah.
Exhibit at the not natural history. Is it the Natural History Museum, or is it just the History Museum that has this extensive Viking Age exhibit going on right now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, probably the History Museum. Yeah.
Yeah, the History Museum.
History museums, and I can't think of the exact name of this one, but we want to see that. Grave mounds, see the music festival, but and I don't say this just because I'm on a video right now. I know this will sound. Really, the highlight of the whole trip was meeting you, Anders, and Kola. That was such a great night.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Thanks for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, because I mean, it felt like we had known each other for a couple of years, but it was just that one night. So we really hit it off. I agree. It was incredible. So
for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of common ground.
Yeah.
So where does this love of Bathory come from? When did you discover this band that's so important to you?
I must have been 14, 13, somewhere in that golden zone where the music that you entire life falls into those years. And I had a friend of mine had picked up at one of their early albums, Under the Sign of the Black Mark, and right away we knew Bathory was something special. But then shortly after that, I was out on a shopping trip with my mother, and I think this was only a month or two later, and I asked if we could go into a record store, and the record store had Blood-Fired Death, which marked Bathory's transition from what would become known as the black metal period and segueing into the Viking metal period. And that album just blew my mind as a kid. I just those two epic, for lack of a better word, tracks that evoke that sense of the ancient Viking past. My mind was blown by those, and so after that, I just became a huge fan, and yeah, it's remained a constant. I've never gotten tired of those albums.
Nice.
And it's great that of course there's a comic book connection there as well with the title, as we discussed when we met. The title for that album was taken from a Swedish Conan comic book.
I don't think this is widely known. I think this is
please elaborate.
Yeah, but it says on the cover of one of the issues that were published in the 80s. Blod eld död.
Nice.
Blood-Fired Death. And
that's awesome.
So that is that's pretty funny actually, that one of the metal anthems is from a Swedish Conan comic book, and now of course as you know, Conan is owned by Swedes.
Right.
The copyright, the guys who, and I mean, of course they sell it from time to time, but the guys who started a major role-playing game chain and board game chain, they're the ones who own Conan these days.
He's back where he needs to be.
Yeah, in the frozen north.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That
is great.
For those who don't know, the main band member of Bathory, some say the only member of Bathory, even though there have been photos of other members, I've been told they're props, basically, that they were pulled in for the photo. I don't know the truth of this or not, but Quorthon has gone on record saying that he pulled a lot of ideas from horror comics. Was it Shock?
Yeah, Shock. That was Creepy was called Shock in Sweden. And those Warren magazines when they were published in Swedish.
Oh yeah, and but yeah, he specifically mentioned Conan. Comics that he would read, so we know he was looking at them. And then he had I don't want this whole conversation to turn to Bathory, although I'd be happy.
Yeah.
A concept album Blood on Ice, which was sort of a blend of an Icelandic saga with a Conan story. It was him, you know, kind of taking elements from all those things and creating his own story, you know, and you can definitely see those Conan comic books going into that album when you read his lyrics, you know.
Yeah. Great that you say Blood on Ice, because that's that ties into like the band that I've been obsessed with for the past 30 years or so, Death in June, because Douglas has one of the best album by Death in June is called Wall of Sacrifice, and that was inspired by a dream that Douglas had around that time, like 88, 89, where he was led into a house that was on fire, and was taken to the second floor, and there was a wall of ice that was slowly melting with little tendrils of blood running down as the ice melted. It was an ice wall as the house was on fire, and the paths that the blood took through the ice as it melted, that was your life path. So it's like a pretty similar mindset, I think you could say, with all that the harsh drama and the Norse influence.
For sure.
Yeah, but you're also a comic book artist, apart from being a Bathory fan. So let's move on to that. Even though I must say kudos to your Godflesh T-shirt as well, of course. But but the reason that we're talking this specific week is that because you release your first not your, but it's the first one that you've written more or less from scratch. The first Hellboy one shot.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a Hellboy Winter Special.
Yes.
The Yule Cat.
There he is.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I think I brought along a copy.
Oh, yeah, sweet.
There we go. There's the.
Oh, yeah.
There he is.
Yeah, it ships with 2 covers, and this is yours, right?
Yes.
This is mine. And then somewhere here.
There's some other guy done the other cover. I don't know. Oh.
Yeah, that's the original, right? Yeah. Wow.
Oh, nice.
So, that I feel like I'm done. I've finished everything.
You can officially retire now. Okay, nice.
Okay, that's great, and it's beautiful that it's released on December 6th.
Yes.
And that's also, apart from now being a Hellboy holiday with us, it's also the 50th anniversary of the pagan classic The Wicker Man.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, wow.
It opened on December 6th in 1973, so 50 years.
That's great. Have you seen that? It's relatively new. I think it might be 2 or 3 years old. This 3-hour folk horror documentary called it's
Woodlands blah 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 dark. It's a very long title for a very long film, but I know, I've seen it.
Yeah, I just rewatched it recently, and of course,
Woodlands Dark and Bewitched or something like that, right?
Days Bewitched and Woodlands Dark or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just it comes to mind because I just rewatched it. Even though it's 3 hours long, it goes so fast. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's a very immersive film that very well made.
I wrote down the names as it went along. Here's a shopping list for all of them. I'm sure, Anders, you've seen all these films, but there are many.
Were a couple of surprises for me as well, I have to say. So, but it's a beautiful movie, highly recommended. And so it's this week. Everybody knows what they're gonna do. They're gonna read the Yule Cat and watch Wicker Man the weekend.
Fine evening.
Perfect.
And since we're on the subject of anniversaries and such, it's now been 26 years since the first Hellboy. It was a Christmas special then, back in '97.
And which one was that?
It's the one with the Gargiani cover where,
Right.
big red and one of the mystery man guy in the helmet. They're having Christmas dinner with being served by a skeletal lady. And that was and I mean I guess that was the first published Hellboy Christmas story. Christmas Underground is in that one, and some other bits and bobs, but that's the main like Hellboy story as I recall.
Came up in trying to decide when the Yule Cat would be, what year the Yule Cat would fall in.
Yeah.
Because it ties into, I hope I'm not just jumping off road and jumping ahead, but the
No.
Yule Cat story definitely ties into the events of Bones of Giants.
Oh yeah, and you did the comic book version of this novel.
I did.
Yeah.
That was, I remember we have an art museum in Boston called the ICA. Oh God, why can't I remember what the acronym stands for? It's an art museum. And Christopher Golden and Mignola came there to do an interview. I think it was, or Christopher Golden was interviewing Mignola on stage. And I think it had to do with the release of the Baltimore novel.
Okay.
But they talked about a number of Hellboy topics. I don't know if both Del Toro films were out at the time, but they were going over, that process of adapting Hellboy to film and what Mike thought of the films and all this kind of stuff. And I was such a big fan of Mignola, obviously, and of the Bones of Giants book, that even though I went there to see them, I was too nervous to go talk to them after, so I just left. And,
ouch.
And then the funny thing was, years later, that I ended up working with both of them on that. It was probably 20 years later, but it was years later working with both of them at on the adaptation of Bones of Giants. But I just couldn't get up to talk to them after the event, even though they were both so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, you're in good company since you named me a Lovecraft scholar. Lovecraft, he went to see one of his literary heroes, Lord Dunsany. And might also have been in Boston actually, but anyway, he didn't go talk to him afterwards either.
Yeah.
But he hid his nervosity behind more. It's so pathetic when people fawn over the famous or something like that. Is what is what he said. He's been quoted as saying.
At one point, I worked at a comic book museum in Western Massachusetts for a while. The Ninja Turtle started there, and one of the two creators started a museum for comic book.
Yeah, cool. It seems to have been such a beautiful place. Is it still operational or no?
It was in 2000. I'd still be there now. Probably working in comics. I would just be working at the museum and happily go every night to watch The Wicker Man. No aspirations otherwise, but oh man, the collection that was there. I'm just trying to think of things off the top of my head. Well, a massive Kirby collection. There were Frazetta originals on the wall. It wasn't solely comics. I'd say it was 90% comics, but a lot of fantasy illustration as well. And why did I bring up this story? Oh, I remember now. I went out to get a burrito at lunchtime, and when I came back from getting this burrito, my other coworkers were like, "Matt, prepare yourself because you just missed someone very important." Because occasionally people who were interested in fantasy art and that kind of thing would come by the museum. And I said, "Okay, who came?" And they said George Lucas was just here touring around, and I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan.
Yeah. But I hope it was a good burrito.
But I also said to my coworkers, I was here because what would I would be the 5 millionth guy to have like a tear in my eye why I told them how I wanted to be Luke Skywalker when I was a kid,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was spared that embarrassment.
Oh.
Yeah, well. Yeah. Yeah, that's a therapeutic way of looking at it, I guess. It's harsh. Yeah, but let's wind our way back to the Yule Cat for a bit. What can you tell us about that story? We touched upon that it follows the Bones of Giants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's early 1990s, right?
Right. So Bones of Giants, I think, was 88. And then the events of Bones of Giants affect this story. So I knew I wanted to place it close.
Yeah.
But the first winter after the events of Bones of Giants would be 89, which were the events of that A Christmas Underground story, the one with the Gary Gianni cover. I could have placed it. I think the events of Christmas Underground happen on Christmas Eve specifically. And so I don't, in the Yule Cat, I don't say it's the winter season, it's approaching the holidays. I don't say it's Christmas Eve or the day, even that week, just that it's winter and it's sort of the Yule season, or is approaching. Technically I could have placed it in the same year. I thought about it for a second. I thought about having Hellboy deal with all the events of the Yule Cat, and then he has some funny thing where he's talking to one of the, either Kate or Professor Broom back home, saying he's looking forward to coming home for the holidays, and then they tell him, wait, don't get settled yet. We're sending you to England.
Okay.
Which would be a reference to then the events of Christmas Underground. So I thought about that for a second, but I also kind of liked, for two reasons, one of which is pertinent to this conversation. I like setting it in 1990 for two reasons. One, for giving it its own year, and then the other being 1990, the year that Hammerheart came out by Bathory.
I knew it. I knew it.
Oh yeah. Wow.
If there's any album that set me off on, reading all the Icelandic sagas and Norse myths, it had to, Hammerheart was that album that created a miniature movie in my head. As he just created this really cinematic album that just, I never get tired of. So 1990 was also a special year for that.
Great, I love it. It has to be that year. Great.
Yeah, and that was the starting point for your engagement in the Norse myths, or was that earlier? Or was it that album?
No. I mean, I was lucky. I'm really young. I was lucky that my parents, my mother specifically, had a great, and so a lot of mythology from all over. Greek mythology was really my first love. But I know we had some books on Norse mythology, and then taking it in indirectly from things like Tolkien, which once you start, if you come to a lot of Norse mythology or that kind of thing after reading Tolkien, you sometimes are really surprised because like, oh, look at all these names and similarities, because Tolkien wasn't necessarily making things up on whole cloth. He was just a master at reconfiguring a lot of elements. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't, I don't mean to downplay it, but, there is a lot of, everyone takes, inspiration and pulls from sources. And Tolkien certainly pulled from, Norse mythology and that kind of thing. And so, indirectly through Tolkien and indirectly through Robert E. Howard, this kind of stuff. So I think there was a seed bed for my interest in that material, and also Walt Simonson's Thor comics. I didn't have a lot of comics as a kid. My parents gave me Tintin first, and that's still my favorites. I love Tintin. I actually, one of the best recent comics related experiences for me was being asked to do a convention in Belgium in, oh God, I'm going to forget the name. I'm sorry, I'm doing this a lot. we had been invited to Angoulême, me and the writer of this book, Lake of Fire, because a French publisher had reissued it. And so when we were there, we met this guy from Belgium who later invited us to his festival a couple months later. And it was in the same town as the Musée Hergé if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
And so I saw, like, there were tears in my eyes. I saw like original pencil sketches for Tintin and these books. I was given Tintin in Tibet and Cigars of the Pharaoh were the first two comics I
Wow.
read. I still have Cigars of the Pharaoh, the original. I don't know what happened. I think Tibet's always been my favorite, so it probably got, it probably endured like a really harsh life being dragged around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's in pieces. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Wonderful.
Yeah, and so that was just, I didn't know the museum was there. It wasn't until we got to the town we were told we could go see this museum. And so, yeah, that was so cool. I couldn't believe I got to see these original, not only the inked pages, but, concept sketches and, the pencil rough for the Tintin in Tibet cover, where you're still like working out where the footprints went and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, that's truly like a holy grail of comics, I gotta say.
Yeah. But aside from Tintin, some of the earliest comics I can remember being given or enjoying were Thor comic books, and then of course early Star Wars comic books. Because everyone wanted to extend that Star Wars experience from the theater, and you couldn't watch it at home, so you would treasure the bubblegum cards. Those would have.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I remember waiting during the summer of 1983 when they were going to start publishing the Star Wars comic in Swedish. That was a long wait.
You had to, wow.
Yeah, but it started with issue number 50, so yeah.
So I guess to get back to your point, maybe some of the early interest started with those Thor comics, even though it's a very specific take on the material.
But it's still there, right? It's like
so there would have been that, and then there would have been the books on mythology that would have been lying around the house, and then those Conan stories and Tolkien books and all of that kind of festered away, and it was just sort of a bed of interest I always had in me. And then I do think it was Hammerheart that I listened to that. I was just like, oh, okay, that it's on now.
That's it. Yeah. The final catalyst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I always think I think in my first book, Barbarian Lord, which was my own character, strangely it was released by a children's book publisher, which was not my intention, but it's not inappropriate. It's just like I didn't have and I remember when the guy from the publishing company, Clarion Books, or Houghton Mifflin, I think they were working together. He contacted me to ask me if I'd be interested in releasing my book through them. The first thing I said was no, because I was like, I don't want to change it to fit a specific age group. And I would say the same to, if Heavy Metal Magazine had contacted me and wanted to run it, I also didn't want to make it more violent or, I just wanted to do exactly what I wanted to do and not change it to fit a target audience. So I had I didn't want to, it had equal inspiration from like Conan and the Icelandic sagas, but also Bone. I'm a huge fan of Just Smith's Bone, and I just wanted all those things to coexist in this book. And so initially, I didn't want to deal with a marketing department who had a specific age group in mind. And luckily, this publisher didn't want to put any restrictions on it, and so it came out through this children's book publisher. It actually wasn't in comic book shops; it was in children's book sections.
Okay.
But I want to say it's probably the only children's book or children's, age graphic novel that has Corthon from Bathory thanked in the.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe bet, I would say.
Jeff Smith, Paul Simonson, Basil Polidorus for the Conan soundtrack. I was hoping.
Oh yeah.
And
brilliant.
Hergé and Corthon. Those
That's good. That's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, but the Yule Cat is a very specific piece of Icelandic folklore. You know, it's and it's fine that I think that Mignola has, and now you have tie into that age-old tradition of telling ghost stories for Christmas. And could you tell us a bit about the Yule Cat again? Because it's sort of a relative to Krampus, who was also featured in a Hellboy story, incidentally.
Yeah, the funny thing is that it wasn't initially intended to be the Christmas special.
Okay.
It had a very odd and prolonged start, this comic.
Okay.
And if you want to hear about it, I'll tell you the full story.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how interesting it is, but it's long.
Yeah.
So,
that's us.
It begins with the first Hellboy thing I did was a one-shot called Long Night at Goloski Station.
Oh, yeah.
And there it is.
Hey, look at that.
And it's also in, for those of you who don't buy single issues, you should, but it's also in this collection.
So when I got an email from Mike asking me if I was interested in doing a Hellboy story, which of course I immediately thought was fake, coming from some friend of mine. But,
that would have been too cruel. I mean, yeah, let's play a joke on Matt. I'll just impersonate Mike Mignola and ask him if he wants to do a comic.
But you know, I said yes so fast that I didn't think that could I actually pull it off, you know. And so I was a little bit nervous about it. Excited, turning to nervousness to because you know, with something like this, it's exciting to do, but I'm a Hellboy fan, like, first and foremost, and so you know, I know what I want out of a Hellboy book. You know, you don't want to fumble something like that, I think, if you're a big fan of it, you know. So the first thing I did was just start sketching Hellboy, and instead of being smart and doing a bunch of poses and his head, you know, in different positions, instead of just doing that, I decided to like make up a little story. And I had been to Iceland not that long before this, and so I was thinking about it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to put Hellboy in Iceland. And my logic, you know, for what it was that I would be forced to draw Hellboy in ways I might not think of if I was just sketching him directly on, you know, on a sketchbook. You know, like if I was just drawing Hellboy, I'd probably draw him full body in some sort of heroic pose. You know, there was like a Tom Waits quote, I think. He said something like, your fingers are like dogs. If you allow them to do the same thing all the time, they'll just keep doing them. And so he was like forcing himself to like play with other instruments so he wouldn't just keep writing the same songs on, you know. So it was almost a little bit like that, where I was like, if I just sketch him, I'm probably going to do the same sketch like over and over again. So if I draw this little story, he'll have to be like addressing people, talking to them. He'll have to be small in like a wide shot of like an establishing shot. You know, he'd be from different angles and things like that. And so that was kind of the idea. And I thought it would be fun. And so I just thought I'd do, you know, half a dozen pages or so of Hellboy roaming around Iceland. And I started to come up with an idea for a story and sketched in dialogue. And so that's where it began. And yeah, I think I did like 4 or 5 opening pages, which are actually very similar to the pages that are in the printed book. And then I did an ending that was very different, and in these original sketch pages. But I showed them to Mike just by way of saying, "Oh, look, I'm getting ready for Goloski Station whenever the script comes." So that was the thing. I didn't have a script for Goloski Station, so I couldn't prepare for it. By, you know, I knew there would be a werewolf hunter in it. And so I started sketching some werewolf hunters, my ideas, but it was really kind of pointless because until I get the script from Mike that says what this guy looks like, there wasn't much point in designing characters without description. So I did this little short story, showed it to Mike, and then he surprised me by saying, like, hey, why don't you finish that up and we'll run it somewhere. But so that was shocking to me. But the initial thought would be like a 12-page story that maybe would go in a collection.
Yeah.
Or, but then the problem with that, I remember Mike saying, the Hellboy comics world is sort of a self-sufficient world. It doesn't really tend to refer to the novels, so it wouldn't be, comic wouldn't suddenly refer to events that happened in Bones of Giants or in the Lost Army or, any other media that might have a Hellboy story, a video game or something. The Hellboy comic kind of, refers to things within its own, world. And so his thought was, oh, maybe we can run a little text preface, because sometimes they have those in collections where it'll say, Mike will write something about, this story originated as an homage to, this or that. I feel like maybe Right-Handed Doom or one of the other ones, there'll be a little preface of text before each story. And so that would have been the workaround. Because, I should have said initially, because Bones of Giants wasn't adapted to comics yet, so it didn't exist in the Hellboy comics world. It only existed as the novel. And so, so initially maybe it would run in a collection. Then there was some thought once I started working on Bones of Giants that I could finish it up and run it in the back matter of Bones of Giants, and it could be a little epilogue. And then it just kept getting put on the back burner, because I think I started working on Bones of Giants and then moved into Hellboy in Love. And I always wanted to do it, but I just never seemed to get around to it. And then as I was wrapping up Hellboy in Love, we finalized the plans to actually put it out in some form, and that became the Winter Special issue. Hey!
Hellboy in Love.
And so, this is a long story to say. It didn't start as, it wasn't like, do you want to do a Winter Special? Practice for Gillespie Station, and then just sort of took on a life of its own. And then the Yule Cat, I just wanted to, I like the idea of sending Hellboy to Iceland. It feels like somewhere he would go, it's just ripe with that, the history and the mythology, all the folklore. Of course Hellboy would go there at some point. And so picking the Yule Cat, what didn't come first? It came, let's have Hellboy in Iceland, and then what would he run into there? And initially, of course, I'm thinking trolls, but he's you have troll mythology, in various different places. What could be really specific to Iceland? So, you have the Necropants, which, if you haven't heard of the Necropants, you should look it up.
The Necropants, yeah, I will.
Flesh, which there could be a good ghost story there.
Yeah.
Waiting to be told.
Yeah.
And then the Yule Cat came up, and the Yule Cat is just it's hard to go wrong with like a giant cat. That's just either you like cats and that's great, or you're fearful of cats, and that works too. So I settled on the Yule Cat, and then started. Once we started firming up the idea that it would actually be a standalone issue, and it would expand from my initial, whatever it was, 10 to 12 pages to 20 pages, then I sat down and actually typed out a script and started thinking about, when it would be set, and, what would, all the various details that would happen. But but it's funny how much of the initial pages just made it in as they were, because I just liked the dialogue. I happened to sketch in way back when. In early 2019, maybe it was a while ago that those first pages.
Yeah, but it says something about just when you just follow your ideas, and it's sometimes you hit the nail on the head right away, and then you can use stuff from the first draft, so to speak.
Yeah, there's something to be said for not having any, not thinking anyone's ever going to look at it.
Yeah.
That was the same way I began Barbarian Lord as well. I drew up a bunch of strips for that character, and this was pre-internet, or pre me having a computer, and and there was no outlet for them. They were not intended to be shown to anyone. I just drew them and then filed them away.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think sometimes just not worrying about how anyone else is going to perceive what you're doing just allows you to, enjoy yourself and just embrace the things you like to think about.
Yeah.
So.
And this is a bit like inside baseball maybe, but there is a nice reference to Grettir in the Yule Cat story, and you've done another strip about that guy. Could you tell us a bit about that? Jim Henson storyteller.
I wish I had I wish I thought about that before this interview, because this is going to be. But the way I remembered was that
yeah,
the storyteller was about each series was about a specific mythological creature or type. There was a series about giants. There was a series, I think, about mermaids.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was, oh God, what was it? Sprites or something? And I remember asking the art director. It wasn't elves, but I remember asking the art director. I was like, I want to set this in Iceland, and there's a great bit of folklore, a folktale with elves that I'd love to include.
Yeah.
And, I wish I could remember what the series was now. Well, I'll let it go. But so I read this piece of folklore. I think it was called Hilda the Elf Queen or something like that, or Hildur the Elf Queen.
Mm-hmm.
There's an unnamed farmer. There's an unnamed character in it that reminded me so much of the personality of Grettir. I can't remember now if he dispelled the ghost like Grettir was famous for in his youth. But there was a number of things I was like, this sounds like it could have been Grettir. And so why don't I make it him? And then rewrite the story and just have this fit into, I looked at the timeline of his life and I tried to find a point where it fit. And I want to say, and don't quote me on this, but I want to say I read later on, someone else found this, nothing to do with me in my comic book, but someone else mentioned the similarity between this unnamed character in the original folktale and Grettir.
Oh.
So it just seemed like it was calling for it, and then So, I mean, that's just one of my favorite sagas. I think Njal Saga is probably the best written. It's just so beautifully constructed, and I respect it on that level. Outlaw sagas are for me, Grettir and Gisli, and of course I really like Egil Saga. Just a lot of the poetry that he comes up with in that saga is fantastic, and I just love that it was unique to me. I had never run into sort of, strong man, sort of borderline psychopathic, but not entirely unlikable. Master of like complex and beautiful poetry. I just loved that. And so, Grettir always rates high for me because he's no stranger to poetry as well. Although I think Egil is probably the superior poet. But Grettir, found his way into the Jim Henson's story, and then of course because this Yule Cat is set in Iceland, I had to make various saga references, and so we have. There's a beer in Iceland that's called Ales lager or Ales beer, and I don't know if it's making direct reference to Ales Skallagrimsson or if it's I'm assuming Ale is probably it looks like Egil, but I think it's pronounced Ale. Maybe it's just a common name, but I saw that beer when I went there, and so, of course there needs to be a Grettir stout as well.
Of course, yeah.
It had to be a stout, but I think there's a few other saga references hidden there as well, but I can't remember what they are right now.
Oh, but that's you gotta read the comic.
Oh yeah. Don't give everything away.
Yeah, the people who listen to this and see this gotta read the comic and find them. Compile like a note section.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I'll go off road. It's when you're something like this. It's. I had to think about this, about taking these personal interests, and how many of them will translate on a broader level. So it's constantly sort of saying, oh, I want to include this and make a reference to, but then is it just a collection of references that a few people will appreciate, and it's really not doing any service to a Hellboy story. So there's a couple things sprinkled in there, but try not to be so heavy-handed with that.
No.
Kind of, but if and you pick up on it, then you might get a kick out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see a little bird behind you on the sill there, and that was one of my without giving too much away, that was one of my favorite bits about the Yule Cat story, is the chorus of birds that are commenting on the happenings.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mike's Hellboy comics are fantastic for always having some little mouse or some character in the background. I mean, that stuff is just great. I love that.
Yeah.
And then, again, that coming from the sagas as well. What was it? Oh, the one with Sigurd the Dragon Slayer.
Yeah, he can talk to birds after he gets a whiff of that dragon blood, right?
Yes, exactly. So I always loved that bit. That I think it might have been nuthatches in the original, and they're talking away, and Sigurd can't understand anything they're saying, warning about his treacherous uncle until he tastes the dragon's blood, and then he picks up on all the stuff. And
yeah, yeah, that is fantastic.
Yeah, I saw Mike Mignola today posted a page of a new project he's working on.
Exactly.
And he has a couple of I think ravens in that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be great. I mean, it's always going to be great, but it's.
Yeah, but like you say, I was really happy to see those birds in there on one of the, I guess, the first pages that are revealed publicly. So that bodes well for the whole story, I think.
And the fact it's a non-Hellboy story, I mean, it's, as much as I love Hellboy, it's exciting to think, what else might,
Yeah.
A lot of different stuff, and so it could go anywhere, which is exciting to think about.
Yeah. Because I mean, the funny bit with the way Mignola talks about his work is that, oh, this was so obscure that nobody else would ever be interested, and then he does something like The Amazing Screw-on-Head, and it's like, it's hey, why aren't all the comics like this? It's and it's one of, I mean, arguably one of his most popular stories ever, and that was him doing, nobody's going to care about this. and it turned out otherwise. Yeah.
Kick myself for not getting that artist edition. The one that's the size of.
That's a beauty. Yeah.
So
it's great.
It's on the list.
Yeah, you will get it eventually. But let's talk about your one other thing that I really like about the Hellboy comics is all of the puppets. And you drew some puppets yourself in this issue of Hellboy in Love.
Yes.
And and that leads us into a more general question about working from other people's scripts versus writing your own. And so how was the collaboration with Christopher Golden on Bones of Giants and
it's
Hellboy in Love? Do you get like a full script, or what was that process look like?
Yeah, I do. It's fairly detailed. So
Yeah.
Chris is a great writer, and I just felt like my job was to not mess it up, because he has a clear vision of what he wants. That puppet sequence was probably the most difficult. It existed in several forms. When you first encounter them, they're in our world. I'm assuming, and this is not spoiler territory, I think, because
no,
comics have been out for some time. But when you first encounter them, they're sort of almost 2D shadows. They can become sort of almost a 3D form, but they sort of move along surfaces like walls, and they pop out of the ground and attack people. And then you encounter them again when Hellboy is pulled into their world, and everyone in there is existing as a very much a 2D shadow puppet. That was a interesting challenge. And then we emerged later as more sort of essentially like fully formed 3D versions. And so, trying to sort of pull that all off and have it make sense, that can be tricky, And you work with someone like Chris, he knows what he wants to do. He's also very good to collaborate with, in the sense you can just call him and ask, what did you mean here, or something like that,
Oh, okay.
I mean, most writers I've worked with, and I haven't worked with many, are they want it to look good, and so they're pretty good about, willing to make time to talk about what they're thinking about, for what their idea was for something. But I didn't want to collaborate with anyone at all initially. It was I did that Barbarian Lord story, and then I didn't intend to do it at all. That was just meant to be a sort of a self-indulgent thing to be fun. And because I think I wasn't working in comics. I was doing some like children's illustration, and that was just meant to be sort of like, I'm always doing things that are tangent to my interest, but not really directly. There was some fantasy in the children's stuff, but I did a lot of standard, sort of educational illustration as well, which was, it's a job, which is fine. I was happy to have work, but Barbarian Lord was meant to be just a full indulging of, all the stuff I loved. And then that was going to be it. I wasn't going to move on to any other comics after that, And then Nathan Fairbairn, who wrote Lake of Fire, that's the one that sent us. He found me online. I think he had a lot of well-known comic book artists that he worked with coloring, because he was a colorist at the time. Now he's transitioned fully into a writer, but he was doing just coloring, and he was working with people on Wonder Woman, big titles, and like really very, very good artists.
And he colored one of my favorite comic books of all time, Pax Americana.
Oh yeah.
Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley, Watchmen cover, so to speak.
I don't know if he asked Frank, but I know he asked a lot of people who he worked with to do this book Lake of Fire with him first, people he knew. And I think that what he told me is they just were also busy with their schedules. They liked his script. So then he just looking for completely unknown characters, and found me online, and so we did Lake of Fire together. But I remember our initial conversation. I was like, I don't know, Nathan, your script is, there's a lot of emotional range in it and things that I don't try to pull off normally. But without knowing what Barbarian Lord looks like, maybe this won't make sense. But it's very simplistic. It's a very simple, almost Hanna-Barbera, old He-Man cartoon kind of style. And there's not
Sandar.
a lot of... Well, yeah, exactly.
Sandar the Barbarian.
But is that I didn't see myself able to pull off his script. And I remember him saying to me, look, Matt, I'm a great collaborator. If you agree to do this, we'll work together on it and we'll figure it out. So I very reluctantly said yes, and then that was like the best experiences I think I've ever had in comics, because it was just the two of them. We didn't have an editor on that book. We didn't have a book designer, or we didn't, basically Image put it out. It was almost like self-publishing with like the Image name on it. I don't think the two of us had to make every decision. And
yeah, that's what I hear from other guys who have worked for Images, that you can ask for an editor, but they don't foist one on you if you don't want it.
Okay, so maybe it's more common than I thought.
Yeah.
All of it came through Nathan, because he had a relationship with the guy, I can't remember his name now, off the top of my head, the guy running Image, from doing coloring work. So
like Eric Larson, or
he was talking with Eric about doing
this
book before I was ever involved. And Eric, I think, basically said you can get who you want. I didn't have a lot of experience before then knowing what working for a comic book publisher was like, because I had worked for this children's book publisher. And so I really learned to appreciate what a good collaboration is like, working with Nathan on that book. And so every writer has been a little bit different, but it's all been pretty good. And I don't know if that answers your question really, but
I think it sort of does. And speaking of that, collaborations, I just, in preparation for this, I reread your Planet of the Apes piece, and it was interesting, since there were a couple of script pages included here in the back matter, and that was in combination with what you're telling me now, that gives away quite a lot about the process, because the Matt Kindt script in there was also pretty specific, even though he of course, like any good scriptwriter, leaves room for the artist to interpret stuff, but it's I found it to be pretty specific in some details, like the dress and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. And Matt, that was the start of Matt and I working together, because I had read Ether. I think that was illustrated, and I just love his work. He did that fantastic adaptation of Beowulf. And so I was contacted by, I had done a few things for Boom, including that Jim Henson comic. So I'd done one or the very small things, like a couple of short stories, I think, and maybe some covers. And so they asked me if I wanted to. I had my choice of doing a number of Planet of the Apes stories. One was a full issue doing the modern apes sort of storyline, the based on sort of the world that the newer films. And then it was a very short. I think that one with Matt Kindt, that might only be like 8 pages or something. It's very short.
It's a short, sharp shock type of story.
Yeah, and then they said, or you can do this short 8-page story with Matt Kindt. And I was such a fan of what he did, what he and David did with Ether, that that even though it would have been a better financial move, as a full, no, I want to work with Matt. And not only that, but Matt's story was set in the original Apes timeline. So I was like, okay, cool. And we did that together, and I guess the editor of Boom liked how we worked together, so they started trying to find a project for Matt and I to, do that wasn't a licensed property like Apes, but something original Matt would write. So Matt knew I'm a huge fan of Twin Peaks, the series. Which reminds me, Anders, I still owe you a Twin Peaks poster. I promised you that. After this, you need to send your address.
Sure, I will. Thanks.
So Matt wrote this fantastic Twin Peaks-esque kind of story that I did not want to draw. I didn't know he was gonna. I'm like at the time I had done Barbarian Lord, which is basically all these guys in loincloths running around, and then you have Lake Fire, which is people in tunics. You know, I stuck to the fantasy realm, and the idea of drawing police stations and cars and creating a sort of a modern mystery story with supernatural elements. That sounded like something I would absolutely want to read, but horrifying to draw.
Okay.
Shy away from a lot of sort of modern technical things if I can. Sometimes I can't.
Yeah, but I mean that's why you're such a great fit for the Hellboy comics, because Mignola has been quoted as saying pretty much the same thing. You know, I don't want to draw any more cars.
Yeah.
That's why he moved Hellboy to hell and all that.
Yeah. Which it's great because he Hellboy exists in the modern world, but someone really nicely put it once. He exists in the haunted corners of the modern world.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's in the cemetery, or he's in the crumbling monastery, or it's
of course, yeah.
And so Hellboy in Love definitely challenged my ability, because there was some in Bones of Giants, but I think in Hellboy in Love it had a few car scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of train rides and whatnot as well.
It's a hard time.
Yeah.
Does it so well. Well, Duncan Furgado does amazing. Like Duncan Furgado in Hellboy: The Wild Hunt. What's the one where the car and the monster comes running out of the woods and punches the car and it goes flipping over the
Oh yeah, it's the mutated hedgehog guy, right?
I pages with amazement, and Peter Bergting was the guy I was going to bring up. Like, he, in his latest comic, Mortal Terra, which was written by Christopher Golden and his co-writer, and Chris O'Halloran's coloring, which is nice to see him doing more Hellboy work, or Mignola-verse kind of related work. Peter just does an amazing job at drawing the train sequence in that issue, and I feel like this looking at a lot of artist work, and maybe it's not. I'm sweating bullets trying to pull off a train or a car, and crying bitterly into my coffee as I'm trying to get my mind to mentally move around the inside of a car and what would it look like as different people are speaking. Something has a hard time figuring it out, and I feel like Peter does it just like with ease, and maybe that's how every artist looks at another artist's work, but it just looks so beautiful when he does it. So I'm always, having tried to do it, gritting my teeth, when I see people do it really well, I'm always very appreciative of it.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, and you touched on Chris Halloran and working with colorists. And do you always do that, or have you done your own coloring in like Barbarian Lord, for instance?
I'll jump into that. I'll just finish my previous thought with.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, where was I going with that?
The cars and the.
Matt had written that Twin Peaks story, and I thought,
yeah.
It's going to be a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out all this stuff. I think I did some sketches of like a Twin Peaks-esque police station for some of the scenes he described, and so I basically wrote Matt, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right guy for this, and I was upset with myself because I really respect Matt and his writing, and I thought, oh, I've killed this relationship. But then he came right back with the folklores thing, because he said, well, what do you like? And I said, I love mythology and folklore and things that don't have Iris in them, and so he came back with that storyline, and then we went on to do that. And
because I mean, it's you see the modern beginnings, but you get him into the woods pretty quick. That story, right?
Now we get it.
Yeah.
What's the joke? Isn't it like people don't want to draw horses? It feels like it's horses no problem for you. Like, no, give me a horse any day. Get those cars out of here.
He complained about Nathan putting so many horses into Lake of Fire, and his response would be, stop complaining, or I'm going to write a scene with a ton of horses going up a spiral staircase, and you're going to.
Wow.
For colorist, Barbarian Lord I did in grayscale because I didn't want to tackle it in color. I'm very happy.
Oh yeah.
Single illustrations. I feel like that is just color theory and like playing colors off each other, or trying to get a cool mood out of it. I feel like I can do it for a single image, but especially having worked with Nathan and seeing him color Lake of Fire and seeing how whole sections are colored a certain way to evoke a certain mood, or color is used in a way to direct focus to one area in a panel, saving one color, the kind of storytelling thinking that goes on in a great colorist. It's so beyond, just making a picture look pretty, and that's something I deeply respect and don't feel like I have colored my own comics. I think I can make a comic book that looks like it has color, am I
yeah
am I pulling off the mood I want or directing focus? Probably not, so I'm very happy to work with a colorist who knows what he's. And Chris was, when we started on Folklords, I think it was Folklords, me and Matt, they showed me a range of colorists, like 5 or 6 of them. I asked for Nathan because I had just worked with him on Lake of Fire, but I think Nathan's rate was higher than what Boom was used to be.
Okay.
And so I was like, at first I was despondent because I thought, okay, this is a guy I trust, because it wasn't easy in the beginning. The first few pages, Nathan and I he'd color it and I'd say, oh, I don't know about that. And then he'd ask me to try coloring it to show him how I thought it should go. And I just remember, I think we took a few days, and then once it locked in, it was great,
Yeah.
And so the idea of switching colorists to do Folklords, I wasn't happy about. And then I saw Chris's work and I just thought, oh, this is great. And Folklords came out great. And I think Yule Cat is the best work that we've done together. Like, I think I'm really happy with his work on Bones of Giants and Hellboy in Love, but Yule Cat, I think he really knocked it out of the park. I'm not trying to be like emotional, I just think he really captured the icy winter feel of it. It looks great. I'm so happy it printed the way that it looked when he showed me. I would see the work beforehand, but printing is always a bit of dark art. You don't know what's going to happen, and so
no.
Very happy. It looks exactly like we were hoping it would.
Wonderful. I love it.
Great.
When you work with like the in the Mignola verse, if you say, do you feel like you have to adapt your style because Mignola has such a visual presence, like to not emulate, but move it just a little bit, a smidge closer to his style, maybe?
Yeah, that is an interesting question, and I ask myself it often, which is, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like Mike appreciates when you sort of do your own thing, and I appreciate knowing that you don't have to stick to some kind of template. But this will sound a little funny. Sort of my thinking when I'm doing a Hellboy story, art-wise, is I'm almost hoping no one thinks of me at all, and like I want it to just look like Hellboy. And it's kind of like, seeing Star Wars and seeing Empire Strikes Back. As a kid, you're not thinking like, oh, this was directed by George Lucas and this one was directed by Ivan Kershner, or, it's just the story that, and I know Hellboy isn't just being read by kids who don't care who's working on it, but part of me wants it to just feel like this part of this big story. And so I guess this is a really sort of complicated way of saying I don't try to ape Mike, but I do want it to feel like it seamlessly fits in, and I'm not so interested in it being like Matt's Hellboy, if that makes any sense. So I don't feel compelled to at all, stick to it looking a certain way, but I do try to have it feel like Hellboy in the way that I would want to pick up a issue off the shelf and just feel like it fit into the whole Hellboy story. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds totally reasonable to me. But it feels like you might do it almost subconsciously, like because it's such a visually striking and dominant style. So like
Yeah, sure. And he was a huge. I mean, it is a little bit easy, not easy. I don't know, but he was a major influence before I was ever asked to do Hellboy. Like I think if you looked at anything I did before Hellboy, you can clearly see the Mignola influence, and so it's not like I hadn't been staring at his artwork for 20 years before and it influencing anything I've done in comics, so far. So yeah. So yeah, it's funny that it is a kind of a funny thing where it's like I don't feel compelled to draw him like Mike, but at the same time, I'm hoping like someone would just pick it up, not care who drew it, and just be like, okay, this is where Hellboy goes to Giants, or this is where Hellboy, falls in love and is running around the globe, and or this is where he goes to Iceland, and they don't think of me at all. That's kind of my hope. Although the funny inverse of that is with the Yule Cat, I definitely indulged my interest with the writing, and so So in that case, I was sort of more than happy to sort of, maybe put a lot of my personal interest in it, I guess. So, and I'll be curious to see how that goes over.
Yeah.
We'll see this week.
Yeah. Out on Wednesday.
That's right.
And you're also heading out on a bit of a mini book tour, you might say, right?
Yes, 2 days.
2 dates, yeah. So it's a real mini book tour, but it's let me see if I got. Yeah, you're doing this, right?
Oh yes, yeah, yep. That is an illustration from my friend Rowdy's Norse mythology for Bostonians. Series. There's a long story in that too, and I'm sure it's getting late on your end. But
yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I can tell you.
Please.
I used to work at a university, basically at a fine arts library, digitizing slides for professors. There's Rowdy's book there.
Yeah, that's the book. That's the other book you're getting this week.
That's right. That's you got an early copy back in August, but I think it only this week. So I cycled the work, which took me through a couple towns, and at this one intersection, I found a flyer that was posted to a light post, and it just listed all these topics of like leprechaun enslavement and the beheading of the Little Mermaid and Viking booze directory and all these things that were covered in this website and in his book that he was writing.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? And what is he doing posting flyers around about his book? And so it was so specific to my interest and such a strange humor that I immediately contacted him. And then we've been sort of fast friends ever since. And I started doing illustrations that you showed a moment ago for his articles, and now he has his book out, and so his book just came out. The Yule Cat issue came out. They both play off of various bits of Norse mythology or folklore from that region. And so it just seemed like a fun excuse to get together and have a little book release. We're doing it at a pub in New Hampshire and then a pub in Maine. So that's
nice.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. And these texts of Rowdy's, have they been, apart from his blog that he has, do they get published elsewhere with your illustrations before the book?
Yeah, that McSweeney's has been putting it out. I think it's one of their longest columns at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And Rowdy likes to proudly say it's their longest running and least popular.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
His whole idea for the Norse mythology thing is, you have these two original Eddas from which we get all of our knowledge about, the Norse gods and this kind of stuff. You have the elder and younger Edda. And so Roy's idea are a third Edda is found in Boston. And it's this sort of drunk behind a bar has retold all the ancient Norse myths into a recorder and left the alley. No one knows who this person was. They only found the recording. And so the joke of Rowdy's book is that a scholar has found this and is translating it and is treating it as legitimate as the two original Eddas. And so that's the flaming joke of the whole thing. I think it's brilliant. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
No one else is doing anything remotely like it. So I have a lot of fun hearing about these things from him. So we'll have a good time. If the two of you, don't mind getting on a plane, you can come.
Yeah, that would be something.
Yeah. And you're based in Cambridge in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
Lexington, just
yeah. Because I lived in Boston for a few months when my wife was a visiting scholar. Over there. So I went to I was wondering if you went to, because when I visit somewhere, I go around, I check out the comic stuff as much as I can. And there was a festival called, I think it was the Mice Festival, like the Massachusetts Independent Comics Festival, maybe, or something, event, something like that. And this must have been like 2019. I'm not sure if you're around the festival circuit.
I have tabled at Mice a couple times. 2019.
Yeah.
But Mice is fantastic. It's one of the more friendly, inclusive festivals. That, you really get a sense that everyone's there supporting each other, and it's a lot of fun to do. I imagine it's a lot of fun to visit as well.
Yeah.
There was another one called MECAF, which was Maine is abbreviated as
that's right, yeah.
Maine Comics Art Festival. That was very similar in spirit to Mice. I don't know if that's but something like Boston Comic Con, I don't want to start trashing on things, but I've gone to that. It's just it's a different vibe,
Yeah.
There's celebrities, there's it doesn't feel like it's about the comics as much. I mean, Mice, it's just like a brick wall, the sense of love for, like, it hits you as soon as you walk in.
Yeah.
Very dedicated, and lots of smaller publishers or fanzine makers get a lot of space, which is lovely. It was very similar to the festival we have here in Stockholm, the Swedish Stockholm International Comic Book Festival. Which is also more independently focused and talks and stuff like that, and not focused on movies or other stuff like that. We have one of those too, but because it's like the two different ones, right? It's like
I grew tired really quickly of the Comic-Con.
It is. I mean, going to the Boston Comic Con, I saw, people like, God, what is my problem? I keep names as soon as I have
Yeah.
Becky Cloonan. I love the work of Becky Cloonan. I don't know.
Mm.
She did a run.
Oh yeah, we've
Becky,
hung out with Becky a bit.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. So you can find, we did a, in my mind, nice interview with her a couple of years back. That I'll send you the link if you want to listen in on that. So she got pretty excited because we asked her a lot about paper quality and that sort of thing. So
yeah, she liked that. Yeah.
That kept us going for another 15 minutes extra, I think. Yeah.
I mean, she's someone, I forget where she's based out of, but I wouldn't normally run into her, and so being able to get some of the mini comics she had that she doesn't, things that she produces in sort of smaller quantities.
She told us about that, of course, how she does at least one of those a year, because she works a lot of franchise things, and but she wants at least one project that is all her own, where she she decides the whole thing, like I said, from the paper quality and everything and printing.
So the bigger con's good for that, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm just, since we were talking about all of these acronyms, I'm just gonna throw my hat in the ring and suggest that it must have been the Institute of Contemporary Arts where you didn't summon up the courage to talk to Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden, right?
Here we go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
That's a hypothesis, at least. Well, like we said, it's getting a bit late, but if you have a couple more minutes, maybe we could talk about some of your other influences. We've touched upon a lot, I think, in our talk here, but how do you feel about firing off your most inspirational movie apart from Star Wars that we already touched upon?
Oh, God, that's tough.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I feel like we should be back at that pub we were at, and then
yeah, we could stretch this out longer, I guess, and with some more beverages.
Yeah, I don't know about inspirational, but one of my favorites has always been Conan.
Of course.
Conan, yeah. I just love that movie. It just from the music. I mean, that soundtrack is incredible.
Yeah.
There's this outfit called Entrada Records, and I think they reissue soundtracks, and maybe you have these film companies that will find maybe films that aren't that big, maybe some smaller B-movie films, and they'll find the original negative, and they'll find trailers, and they put together this really nice package, giving it all of the love that it sometimes doesn't get. I feel like Entrada does some of this thing for soundtracks. They released a Conan. They found the original masters for the Conan soundtrack, because until now you don't be able to get part of the soundtrack, and I think the rest of the songs that weren't available on the official soundtrack you could find online, but they were in really poor quality.
Okay.
I don't even know how they were circulating. It's not like they were taped from the movie because there was no dialogue, but there were certain scenes, like the scene in the Wolf Witch's hut, and in the Tower of Set, where they climb, they scale up the Tower with Valerian. Sequence. And so I think I had some bootleg that had all these songs that I bought at maybe a comic convention or something, and but I was glad to have them. And then Entrada found all the original masters, and so there's this 3 CD set.
Oh.
This CD is the original release, as it was.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 CDs are the expanded and they have alternate takes on some of these cuts as well.
Wow, you're speaking my language now. I gotta tell you.
Good the Clash of the Titans soundtrack is, but the package is beautiful. I'm almost tempted to order it just based on the and they put the Clash of the Titans one out on vinyl as well, which makes it larger form factor.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and so I'll give it to Conan. But I
Yeah.
mean, somebody visually influential. You could go into something like Blade Runner, or you know, so striking for its time. And again, I feel like it's maybe a little bit like because I got to get the Bathory back in this one more time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't appreciate films now, but because I do, but these seminal films you ran into in this window in your life, maybe you have a special love for those, So, when I start thinking of favorite films, I'm immediately thinking of Conan and The Thing and The First Alien, and these kind of there's a little list that I all ran into in the same few years where I think maybe I was like most receptive to sort of defining my own sense of the things I was into, as opposed to being shown by my parents or something. I mean, when you're young and you start following your own interests, and I think the things you discover in that time period maybe just are hard coded into your identity disc at that point.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's a Tron reference for you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. And what are you working on now, Matt?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on something that isn't announced, so I guess
That sounds good.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Can't talk about is I've been collecting some Barbarian Lord stuff that was never released, and I'll release that next year sometime, I think. But basically, when the initial book came out, my intention for doing Barbarian Lord was doing conventions like Mice. Sort of in the beginning, it wasn't the first one. The first issue wasn't for Mice. It was for this other festival that only lasted 1 year. Paint and Pixel. But a friend of mine says, "Hey, do you want to do this festival together, this comic book festival?" And I said, "Great, but I don't have a comic book." And so I started. Barbarian Lord was a long simmering idea, but I started to actually produce a comic book I could print and bring to the convention. And so then I think the next couple issues. Oh no, there was only that first issue of Barbarian Lord that came out, and then the publisher saw that, and there was that phone call I think I mentioned where they were interested in putting out the book.
Oh yeah.
My initial when I initially said I wasn't interested in doing it because I thought they'd want to change things, they said no, you can do it the way you want. You just can't publish more of this story because we're going to publish the book,
the whole thing. Yeah.
So but I still wanted to go to a convention with a new comic every time, and now Mice had started, and so the next couple comics I created were for Mice, and so I created sort of short stories of Barbarian Lord. So they were the same length as the previous issue I did, but they didn't involve the main storyline that I had been thinking of fleshing out. And I was just going to bring one chapter to every convention whenever I was doing one. And so I switched over to short stories. And I think I'd put out 50 or 75 copies, and then this was 10 years ago now almost, and they've just I don't know how many people have seen them. I don't know, people could have bought them and thrown them away before they ever read them, so I don't think
no
they haven't been widely seen. So I thought anyone who enjoys the character, I would just collect those old stories. One of them was finished, so I'm going to write and finish the other half, and then just drum up an entirely new story, and then just sort of collect all that into a book and put that out next year. So that's what I'm doing in free time when I'm not working on the project I can't name.
The secret project. Yeah, that sounds great.
I'm hoping there's one more. There's this project called Metal Quest.
Yeah.
Which has been a long simmering project a friend of mine wrote, and it just has the best setup. You got these two teenage metalheads in the 80s who sort of get sucked into this realm that's within this ridiculous prog rock record, and
so is that a dream come true or a nightmare for them?
very, very badly want to come out, and we've gotten close once to getting someone to take it on, but
yeah.
Just recently there was something else that came up that maybe it'll find its home. I mean, we could do something like Kickstarter or something like that.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Ideally, I'm so bad at self promotion. I'm terrible at it. So you have to run a very strong, I think, self publishing gauntlet to do something like Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, because then you have to do the super ultra deluxe edition with a prog rock band doing the soundtrack, and you publish it in an LP format.
Yeah,
Ooh.
exactly.
Comic.
There's a one man black metal musician up in Wales who I was talking with, who's going to write the song, I think.
Okay. Wow.
Not that it would be a black metal song, but just that I found a guy who could do all the instruments and
Oh yeah, great. So it's on.
I love this. Let's do it.
Gotta do it. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening over here. And so don't forget the book tour starts on Friday, right?
Right, it's Friday.
So you can buy your copies of the Hellboy Winter Special, the Yule Cat, on Wednesday, then bring them to the pub so Matt can sign them. And then we have to plug your, speaking of self-promotion, your Instagram, Barbarian Lord, right?
Right, yep.
Yeah, so check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need to thank, of course, as usual, Joakim Hanner, who has done the great portraits of myself and Freddie, and Andreas Stellan, who has done the great theme music that me and Matt didn't hear, but Freddie did.
Yeah,
so,
it's only in this year, yeah.
Yeah, and you who are watching us and listening to us right now will soon hear some more music. But before we go, thank you again, Matt, and best of luck with all of your future projects. We'll be in touch again, of course. And Freddie, what do we say?
Läs mer serier.